Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech and iOS 16 Beta 7 and iOS 16 Public Beta 5, as well as a surprise release of iPadOS 16.1 have been out for a few days. We'll talk about some more new features that weren't mentioned in the initial What's New video that's been found since, and also talk about the overall experience that I'm having and you're having based off the YouTube community poll, with battery, performance, and more. And at the time of this video, there's over 12,000 votes on the poll and over 130 comments. So again, we'll take a look at that a little bit later. Now, iOS 16 is feature complete at this point. We shouldn't really expect any new changes unless they announce them at the iPhone 14 event, and we're on the final stretch. We could have one more beta, then a release candidate, then a final release. Again, we'll talk about more specific dates later in the video. Now, yesterday, T-Mobile and SpaceX announced a joint venture where you're going to actually be able to get cell signal in the middle of nowhere. Now, this has long been rumored for iPhones and thought to be coming to iPhone 14, but apparently that's something completely different. Either way, if you have T-Mobile, you'll be able to get coverage even on older phones. So that's something that's nice. Maybe you're in the woods, you've lost cell signal, you should be able to have some sort of data so that you can actually talk to someone if you need help. So that's something that's great to see and hopefully comes to more carriers. Now, before we talk about new features, I keep getting asked about switching from the beta to the public version, so I thought we'd address that. Now, if you're currently on the beta and you're wondering about getting to the public version, well, just keep going. Update to the versions that come out as far as the betas, and then once we get to the release candidate, all you'll need to do is go into your settings, go to General, go down to VPN and Device Management, delete the beta profile, and once the final version comes out, it will either be a new version that you update to, or you'll already just have it as the release candidate. It varies year to year, so some years we actually have the release candidate as the exact same as the public release. Other years we don't. We won't know that until it releases to the public. But either way, we should hear about that in a couple weeks. So look forward to that. Don't worry about it. Just delete that profile and you'll be able to update. And if you want to stop getting betas, again, delete that profile. Now, if we go into settings, there's a new feature under phone. So if we go under phone, down at the bottom, you have call blocking and identification. Tap on this, and this seems to be specific to T-Mobile right now and also Verizon in the United States. It says display verified caller information identified by T-Mobile. You can turn that on or off. It's off by default. Now again, this is something that was actually available in iOS 16 betas before, but is new as far as being able to turn it on. Usually you had to go into your dialer, type a number, and then it would sort of turn these features on. Now you can just flip a switch and it will block anything that's not identified as a business, hopefully preventing some spam calls. Now within iPadOS 16.1 code, it says that we'll be able to delete the Wallet app in future updates, meaning we can press and hold, and instead of just remove app, we'll be able to delete it. So completely delete it from your device, maybe use an alternative. Maybe this is to comply to different laws around the world. But it was referenced in iPadOS 16.1, which doesn't even have the Wallet app. So maybe we'll see that on the iPad in the future as well. So we'll be able to delete or remove that, or just pick something else that we like. Also, something in iPadOS 16.1 is when you open up an app that's meant for iPhone, it now opens up differently for notch phones, meaning it opens in a different aspect ratio, which is 19 to 5:9 ratios. So this is a little bit taller and a little bit narrower this time around. Maybe that has to do with something with iPhone 14, future iPads or more, but either way, it seems to be a little bit different this time around. Also, something that's new in the code but doesn't appear to be new in the operating system is if we go into settings, go to our general settings, then we go down to keyboard. Under keyboard, scroll down, we have auto punctuation options. Now, they could be making a change in the background since this is new in the code, but on the iPad, this is something that's apparently new based off of code itself. So the feature seems to be there in Beta 6 as well, but this has to do with the overall new dictation features of iOS 16 and iPadOS 16. Also in iPadOS 16.1, if we go into YouTube, you'll see here's my video on the Far Out Apple event. Swipe up to go home, picture-in-picture is not working. However, there's a workaround for this for those it's not working for. As long as you have the feature turned on and enabled, swipe up on the dock, maybe open music, and it will shrink to the corner. So that will fix the picture-in-picture issue. So just keep that in mind if you're having that issue. Just wanted to let you know, as it does work, but you do have to use that workaround for now, as Apple changed something so it wasn't working properly. Within Photos, if we select multiple photos, so maybe we'll just select a few here, press and hold, they bunch together and move around together. As I move them faster, they sort of show that there's something behind there. This is not a new behavior in iOS 16, but I haven't seen it before. If we look at iOS 15.6.1, it doesn't do that. It just sort of pops that open, even if you have multiples selected. So that's a nice little feature, and then you can, of course, drag it and drop it elsewhere if you want to, or it just disappears if you're on the home screen. One other behavior I wanted to mention is if you go to focus modes and maybe you add a 10th focus mode, you'll no longer be able to add more. Again, this is not new to beta 7, but if we go in, we'll add a work focus mode. This is all new. All of these are new splash screens now with beta 7. They may have been there for some in beta 6, but you'll see compared to iOS 15.6.1, again, it's very different. It's much quicker if we just customize, and then we can scroll down, add what we want, or maybe just choose our notifications, and then we're done. There's no more to do other than that. With previous versions, there's multiple button presses just to get the focus ready. So they've really simplified this interaction overall, and it's much nicer this time around. Now we have a new interaction or feature that's in context that's very similar to what we have with Mail, where we can put 2 fingers down and then just drag and select, and then either move them, put them in the trash, or elsewhere. In contacts, we can now do the same thing. So if we use 2 fingers, we can select multiples. So you can see I've selected those, press and hold, and then we can drag those around and maybe share them somewhere else. So it's a nice new way to share those contacts, move them around, or select multiples at once. So I hadn't seen that. It's not new to beta 7, but it's something that's new overall in iOS 16. Now if you use volume and then it pops out that slider, you can grab it and then pull it out and move it up and down. That's not necessarily new, but it does seem a little bit wider than it was before. So if we grab that, it gets a little bit wider, then shrinks, grab it again, you can bring it out. It's not new even to iOS 16 necessarily, but it's definitely bigger. Now on the lock screen, there's a change. So if we press and hold, go to customize, and then maybe get rid of these 2 widgets. If we add a singular widget, it centers itself. Now again, this isn't new to beta 7, but it's something that's new that I haven't mentioned in a different video. So it centers it if you use a singular widget. If you add another one, it's going to move it over and keep those centered. However, if you add another larger one, it shoves them to the side. So it's a slight change, not anything revolutionary, of course, but something that's a little bit different. So I thought I'd mention that. Now this update is mostly finished, and it's going to be focused on bugs and sort of issues that Apple's facing with iOS 16 from now on. So it's feature complete. It's really on that final leg of being developed, and so we're going to see things fixed. And there are a few things that seem to be working a little bit better, such as music. So if we're playing a song and then maybe we go to our lock screen again, this widget is working better for most people. Not everyone though. Sometimes there's some overlaps, some duplicate widgets, and sometimes certain widgets are just blank, such as news. So there's definitely some issues still to be resolved, but this is seemingly much better. Also, the performance on phones seems a lot better that way also. Everything is extremely fast and smooth. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but there are some bugs. Most things seem to be pretty good, but there are some issues people are having. Personally, I haven't had a whole lot of issues other than a few small things here and there, such as freezing. And I've heard from quite a few of you in the YouTube community poll that in the comments, a lot of people are seeing messages freeze. I personally haven't had this with messages, but a lot of people say it freezes, it locks up, you have to close the app, or even reboot the phone to actually make it work again. So that's something I haven't seen myself. Also, people are having a lot of connectivity issues this time around, and not just on iOS 16 beta 7, but also iOS 15.6.1. I've heard from quite a few of you saying that it's just poor in general. So I'm not sure if that's something going on with cell phone changes, carrier changes throughout the nation, or something else, but I'm hearing this from a lot of people. So Apple definitely changed something despite not changing the modem. So there hasn't been a modem update for a while, but they could have changed the code that goes along with that. There's also an odd bug. So if we go over here, go all the way to our app drawer or app library, pull down on Spotlight Search. Let's clear that out. Go back, pull down, and then swipe over. There's a delay. Every single time it's duplicated. So we can swipe over again. You'll see as we pull down, go into Spotlight Search and try and swipe, it doesn't work for about half a second for me. Some people see a longer delay. So there's some odd interactions throughout with problems that are still existing. Also, many people are saying that the date sometimes disappears from the lock screen, so they're seeing odd issues and inconsistencies there. Again, some widgets are blank, and then also sometimes the weather app is inconsistent. And you can see that here. It says 88 degrees on the iPhone 8 Plus. It says 89 degrees on my device. The iPad actually says 88 degrees. It just depends on the device. It's mix and match. So if I slide the iPad over here, you'll see it's 88 degrees. So some odd issues here and there with some inconsistencies. Of course, widgets seem to have been problematic since they've been introduced. There's also some issues with banking apps. There's some that just won't support it and will need to be updated once it's released to the public. So lots of little things throughout, but it's getting much better, and I would expect Beta 8 to be even better, or the release candidate. Now, this past week, Apple stopped signing iOS 15.6. That means you can no longer downgrade to it. Now, this could mean we'll get one more iOS 15 update like we did last year, and last year we had iOS 14.8, which released late in September. We actually had that update come out on September 13th, so we could see an iOS 15.7 very soon before that next Apple event. Now, I've talked about the Apple event in a separate video, but just in case you weren't aware, if we go to apple.com, on Apple's website, you'll see this is the Apple event for the iPhone 14. So iPhone 14, 14 Max or 14 Plus, iPhone 14 Pro, and iPhone 14 Pro Max. That's on 9/7 or September 7th at 10 a.m. Pacific time or 1 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, you can watch it on YouTube, apple.com, the Apple TV app, and maybe some other places as well, such as Twitter. So it will be available everywhere. I'm sure I'll be tweeting about it. You'll see a lot of news that day. And last year, we had the release candidate right after that event. So that's what we can expect as far as this goes. So since this is on the 7th, we can expect a release candidate right after that on the 7th, just like we had last year right after the iPhone 13 event. Then we should expect iPhone 14 pre-orders on the 9th, and then having them go to sale usually the following Friday. So that's really what we expect. The 9th should be pre-orders, usually at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Then the 16th would be the date they go on sale to everyone. Now, usually before that, usually the Monday before, so the 12th in this case, is when we can expect the public release of iOS 16. That's what Apple did last year. They released it on a Monday, and that's when it was available. So we could see that same sort of scenario this week, although it could be a couple days after that. It just depends on whether or not it's ready, according to Apple. Now, as far as overall battery life, I've been using this full time as my main phone. You'll see I'm down to 80%, and it's 3:45 in the afternoon today. If we go to my battery health, I'm at 99% on this device after about a year of use, and I do charge it every night for those who haven't seen the other videos about that. But you'll see, well, today I've used it 1 hour and 53 minutes and then had screen off time of 1 hour and 57 minutes. I've only used about 20% of my battery. So with that 20%, that's actually pretty good. However, it varies day to day. You'll see where I used over 50% of my battery and only had 3.5 hours or 3 hours and 35 minutes of screen on time. So it really varies day to day. I would say for me, the battery life is mediocre at best. For some people, it's phenomenal. For other people, it's not great at all. It really depends who you are. So let's take a look at one other person's battery who sent that into me. And this is from Abhishek on an 11 Pro Max, where he had 4 hours and 4 minutes of screen on time, 2 hours and 2 minutes of screen off time, and used a little over 50% of his battery. So about 8 to 9 hours of screen on time, which isn't bad, but it definitely could be a little bit better. So I would expect this to be increased over the next couple of versions, Beta 8 and the release candidate, where Apple will sort of get those things worked out as they do before the final release. Now with iPadOS 16.1 Beta 1, or really iPadOS 16 Beta 7, they're the same thing. If we go into settings, take a look at battery, give it just a moment to load. Over the last 10 days, you'll see it was charged at 8:30 a.m. yesterday, and I've used it for 54 minutes on one day, 1 hour and 47 minutes the next day. So almost 3 hours, and we're down to 64%. The battery life is getting better, but it still has a ways to go. As far as the overall experience, well, it seems to be better this time, but Apple's going to be delaying iPadOS 16 until October, according to many people, and iPadOS 16.1 confirms that. So the delay should be pushed to October or late September, where we expect a separate event where we'll have new iPads, new iPad Pro, a regular iPad that's new, and maybe some additional features. So they want to hold off, get everything right, and then also release it alongside macOS 13 Ventura. So we just got Ventura Beta 6 the other day, and we should have these really perfected before they're released. So they're taking their time with this. I'm glad to see that. And maybe they have some really neat features, but they want to get that external display and stage manager really corrected. They can be very, very buggy if you've used either of them. So it works, but again, it's very buggy, especially if you're using it with an external display. So they need some time to fix that. Now, as far as overall performance, it seems to be really smooth on the newest phones. So ProMotion and everything else seems to be nice and smooth, whether that's scrolling, going into different apps, apps, I really had no issues whatsoever as far as that goes, with the exception of those people having stutters or lockups in different apps, such as messages. However, when it comes to playing games on older phones, which it's odd to think an iPhone X is old, but it's the oldest supported device along with the iPhone 8 for iOS 16, it will play Real Racing 3, no problems, although I do know some people were having issues with this app. You'll see it resumed without an issue. We can go through. Frame rates seem to be pretty good overall, and it's resuming okay as long as you start it without using a ton of other apps. Sometimes RAM management kicks in, and then you'll have to start over. But it seems to be nice and smooth on older devices. Since booting this, I haven't opened, Spotify or Apple Music or anything else here, so if we go into settings, you'll see it even has to load that. But it's still nice and smooth as you would expect. So that's a good sign for these particular devices. Now, as far as the overall heat of the device, while the iPhone X after playing that game is a little bit warm, you would expect that down over the processor area, but in general, it's not getting super hot like it was for some people. So for some, it's been very hot. For me, it's actually managing it quite well this time around and doesn't seem to be warm at all. So that's a good sign. Again, some people are not having that same experience, so it's going to vary. And if you're having issues, make sure you report them in the feedback app. That's something Apple can use before they get to that final release to make sure they get everything right. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the YouTube community poll and what you had to say. So we'll go into the poll, and at the time of this video, you'll see there's 12,000 votes, 136 comments, and 30% of you say that it's great with no bugs as far as iOS 16 Beta 7 or iOS 16 Public Beta 5. And you'll see I had a typo there, must have auto-corrected or I hit that by accident. 3% say it's terrible, just like last time. 13% say it's okay but has some bugs. 48% are on 15.6.1 or older. And again, this week, 6% are using Android. If we look back at the previous one, it's fairly similar as far as it being terrible. A little more bugs, even though there's more votes, so it will take some time for these votes to pick up. Now let's see what you had to say. Andy said, iOS 16 Beta 7 going great on my iPhone 13 Pro. The battery life is getting better. Alexander Croft said the Messages app on iOS 16 Public Beta 5 is buggy and has crashed 2 times. There are some third-party apps that are affected too. Gmail displays a fake lock screen notification, then it disappears. The notification does take you to the app where the email just disappears. One of the music apps, Apple Music or Spotify, have a problem where the lock screen controls become unresponsive and/or behavior, all while displaying the wrong music artwork. Say you're playing the music artist Eminem, you'll hear the song and the screen thinks you're listening to Led Zeppelin. The notification overlapping song album bug on the music app is still happening with me on Public Beta 5, iPhone SE 2. I hope Apple fixes this bug soon, but other than that, it's great. Don't have anything else to complain about really. They're doing a great job with these iOS 16 betas. Matt Robertson says, using iOS 16 Public Beta 5 on my iPhone 12 Pro Max and find there are more bugs than the previous beta, usually on the home screen or lock screen, but it's getting close. And so that's everything with iOS 16 Beta 7 and Public Beta 5. Of course, if you found anything else, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, and I'm looking forward to that iPhone 14 event where we'll finally get to see what that's all about, what new features it has, and of course the final release of iOS 16. Let me know your favorite feature in the comments below, and of course if you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.